and welcome back to the No BS Spiritual Book Club's live video series. And with me today to share the stories behind the 10 books that had the most significant impact on his life is consciousness explorer and author of the Althar, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, it's a difficult one, Althar the Crystal Dragon series of books, Joachim Wolffram. And I'll tell you a little bit about Joachim if you don't know of him already. He says that freedom is the guiding theme of his spiritual and post-spiritual life. How can one advance to the very core of freedom and then realize it in daily life? How can one experience and live consciousness beyond the human limitations? These are the questions that led him to an intense journey through the world of Zen and finally beyond. Apart from exploring consciousness, Joachim received a PhD in operations research and went on to found and manage a company for financial software. And after quitting regular business life in 2010, he took some time to investigate generative arts, the attempt to create beauty with most simple interactions such as drawn lines, humming, or brainwaves resulted in a series of popular apps. And since 2015, his main focus has been on writing, from which the Althar series, The Crystal Dragon, among others, emerged. So he is just written a 6th book, he tells me, and he also offers audio recordings and occasional workshops, and we'll find out more about that later. So Joachim Wolffram, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Welcome for inviting me. Hello, Sandra.
So,
hello, everybody.
Everybody, yes. So tell us, Joachim, what do books mean to you?
Your typical opening question, right? I heard it yesterday and I started reflecting, what would I say to this question? And it's really not easy.
No, it's not.
I would say a book is a potential portal. A good book is a portal into a different realm, a different dimension, a different story. So it's a real gem. And if a book is really good, it becomes a good friend. You want to have it close. You want to have it nearby. So books are very near and dear to me. And they are like bad friends. There are many bad books, which you open up and where you end up is not where you ever wanted to go. The best, you just throw it away, which I'm not good at. Mostly when I start reading a book, I read to the very end. For whatever reason, I'm not good in quitting a book in the mid. So books are very important to me and have always been.
So interesting, isn't it? I mean, I like what you said, you know, I don't read a book to the end if I'm not enjoying it. If I feel that whatever expectation I had is not being met, I'm out of there. And I feel very disappointed. It's like being betrayed by a good friend. But, you know, good for you for keeping at it.
Yeah, I learned a long time ago that even if a book is really not good, there might be this one sentence, a single sentence, and you dig a lot of mud and not to say shit or bullshit, but then there's a small gem which you didn't expect, and I'm always hoping for this, and most often I find this one little sentence which, well, enriches you. And even though the rest could be better, this one sentence would have sufficed maybe. But that's why I keep on reading, and maybe also for honoring the authors.
It takes a lot to write a book, so yes, they do. They should be honored. So what was it like for you having to compile your 10 best list?
It was not so easy, because first I thought of it as finding really the 10 best books that I would suggest to anybody to read if he's on or she is on the spiritual path. But I realized that doesn't make any sense at all. For depending on where you are, you have this one most important book that fits in the moment. And that's why I came up finally with a list of books that were important for me at certain points in my life. Like they were turning points, sometimes initiated by a book or accompanied by a book. And that's the way I have chosen the 10 books of my list. I wouldn't say they are the best, but they were the most important in my lifetime.
And have you listed them in the chronology?
Yes.
How you read them and how part of your journey? That's
Yeah.
great, because some people don't, and it's really nice to see the exploration you and I were having some fun with pronunciation before everyone had joined us, and I was saying that I hate it when I get all of these names on a list that I can't pronounce. I have to spend hours trying to find how to pronounce them, and there are so many different ones. And here we are with the first one, which is the wisdom of Lao Tse.
Lao Tse? I call him Lao Tse. It's the German way. I'm not sure
Okay.
how the original Chinese pronunciation is. Yeah.
There are so many online, believe me. Anyway, I'll say it, The Wisdom of Lao Tse by Yutang Lin. So tell us about what was happening in your life at the time you read this book and why it made such a big impact on you.
I think I was in my early 20s, if not to say just 20, and this was the first book from the Eastern Hemisphere. So the first book was Eastern philosophy or spirituality, and I picked it up, and there were not too many available in the bookstores. I always went to bookstores and checked things out, and then I found that book. I took it, started reading, and I was immediately drawn into it. Like, what is the first sentence in the Tao Te Ching? Like, the Tao that can be spoken about is not the real Tao. Yes, things like that get me. So you have a book. First sentence is, well, what I write about is nonsense anyway, but well, keep reading. And I liked it very much. And when I read through that book, I felt like I'm a Taoist now, whatever that means, because it was just convincing. And in that book also, it's not just the Tao Te Ching, which is quite short, but it's not commented, but accompanied by short stories from Chuang-Tzu, which was a Taoist of later days. And he had very, very funny stories explaining the concepts with daily life experiences. So at the end, I was totally convinced, and I realized half a year later, wow, I feel like a Taoist, but now what? For nothing has changed within me. So I said, well, what's next? What can you do now with that? For there's no way, no practice whatsoever to get used to this. Later on, I learned that there are many practices in Taoism, but at that point in time, there was no internet, so it was not that easy to find. So I was kind of stuck with Taoism. I liked it, but now what? I was a bit at a loss. And then came the
I
second.
don't know much about Taoism.
Yeah.
It always seems to me one of those things that you could go round and round in circles for a long, long time and disappear down a rabbit hole in your mind. Give me an example of something that really, within that book, that made you sit up and take notice.
The very first sentence.
First line.
The very first sentence. You cannot talk about it. And think about all the implications. It says that whatever you say only touches the truth. So from that follows, why run after all the details? Why fight for a certain philosophy or dogma or anything? In the end, whatever is important you cannot express. Like you cannot explain love, or you cannot explain the taste of an apple. That's obvious. Huh? But when it comes to wisdom, you might think, there is in the formula, hidden knowledge, something like this. But the first sentence says it all, and we could stop all spiritual talk right there. Huh? There's not much to talk about, because whatever you say is false. It's not ultimately true. It might be a help on the step to truth and to realization. So I always talk about illuminating illusions with illusions. So find the helpful tools, find the right expressions, the right words, that the illusions are finally shed within you. But in the end, you have to let go of everything. And this is just written in this first sentence, but it's just a statement that you can nod your head to, yes, right? But now what? For you are in a human body, you are in a human consciousness, you are conditioned, socialized, whatever, and you might love this phrase and be the star on the next dinner party and talk about Taoism, but it doesn't change a thing in you. Huh? So, and that's where it becomes crucial. Huh? You have to bring it to life, bring the concept into reality. And this was not in the Tao Te Ching, and if it was, I overread it. Maybe there was something in, but I didn't notice it at the time. Yeah.
Well, I noticed on Amazon that there were many, many reviews that said this is the single most important book of many people's lives.
Yeah, I would say. Maybe together with Hermann Hesse, Siddhartha, which is I found on many 10 best lists on your site,
Yes,
would have
yeah.
been on mine, but I read it at a point where I was already a Zen monk, so it was a very good read, of course, but did not inspire me to do something more. So, but the Tao Te King, I mean, for its simplicity, and it's old. It's old. What was it, 600 BC? I'm not so sure. But it's old, it's still valid. It's the same truth, the same expression that works, at least in a decent translation. And that's why I think it's so important for many people.
So what did you do after that then?
Well, I figured I stumbled around, and then I came across the next book that you would mention right now.
Which is The Gateless Barrier, Zen Comments on the Mumonkan?
Mumonkan.
Mumonkan. By
Mumonkan.
Zenkai Shibayama.
Yeah, something like this. Yeah, I don't know this. I don't know Japanese, but this sounds really Japanese, so it must be right.
Okay.
No,
so
but
tell us
then
about this.
Zen is not that different from Taoism. It said that Buddhism and Taoism blended into Zen, so they took. Is it true? Yes, one can say so. And Zen, of course, has a practice, a decent practice, and there are, you might say, mostly two lineages in Zen. One works with so-called koans, like these funny questions, like what is the sound of one clap, one hand clapping, and rest of that, called Rinzai lineage. And then you have Soto, where it's mostly about just doing the practice, just doing the Zen. And the Mumonkan is a selection of koans that people used for their training, and these are used to get you beyond the mind. So it's a classic book, and it's a collection of, I don't know how many, I don't know, 50 or what koans. But the beauty in this book are all the stories that come with explaining them. So the context is explained, the master who spoke about that, the disciple who got the question maybe, how is it interpreted, and it's really rich. And but you have to know that this is an addition to the standard Zen practice. At that point I knew that already, so I really liked it. I felt, wow, this is something that touches me, that I can relate to. I feel there is some kind of deep understanding on how to guide people into realization, enlightenment, opening up, whatever you call it. So I was intrigued by that, and soon after I started practicing Zen myself. That was the entry door for me, the portal, so to speak. And Mumonkan actually means the gateless gate. So it's a portal into the gatelessness.
So how long after the first book did you find that? Did you find Zen?
Couldn't be too long ago. Maybe 2 years after, at most. I had certain experiences in between. I did other stuff like experimenting with how's it called, NLP, for instance, where you go with affirmations and all this stuff, and I experimented with this and never satisfied me truly. It worked always, like in a setting where you have a test at university. You can program yourself, works perfect for 1 hour, and then it just falls apart unless you put all the energy into all your things that you imagine constantly. And I thought, no, that's just crap. Doesn't work like that. And then I had an inner experience that was deep with me. I asked myself, I was looking for a good affirmation that you do in NLP and these other mind techniques. And I thought, what do you want to be? And from deep down came the answer, nothing. There is nothing that you want to be. Boom. And then I remembered, here you have the Zen stuff, and this is now where you have to go. And that was the thing. And so I already read the Mumonkan. I loved it. Didn't get anything. It's just you feel a resonance, but you don't understand the word. You feel the stories. You feel the determination of the characters involved. But then, well, that's it. But at that point, I realized, well, you want to be nothing? Well, then this is where you have to go. And so I did.
So that was what you were looking for, being nothing.
I wanted to understand this. It came as a shock, of course, yeah. I profoundly understood there is not a single characteristic that I wanted to embody. Nothing against embodying something, but nothing that I wished for. meaning you have the utmost freedom to be whatever you want. If you want to be a specific character and you go into that direction, well, then all the rest is more or less blocked because you are, I don't know, the superstar of music or whatever someone wants to be. And I realized, no, it was just nothing. And I was free immediately. It was freeing. Problem is, these things are very short usually. I speak of moments of enlightenment. It's opening up. But then you are drawn back into the human conditionings and human consciousness and see it from the other side. And that was weird. Was it even real? And, well, you have to make it real.
Chop wood, carry water. Isn't that a famous book? If, life is still the same before enlightenment, after enlightenment. I've got a friend who says, absolutely insists that enlightenment is boring.
Yeah,
you get there and you can't stay there because there's nothing.
Greetings to your friend. Go on. Truly. You see, this is something that is, what can I say, very distracting because people fall in love with these phrases. So, there's this guy, whoever that is, I don't even want to know, maybe it's Dalai Lama himself, I don't care. It's enlightenment, so just don't go there. Figure out yourself, get enlightened, and then talk for yourself, and not a single moment before. And I tell you something, if enlightenment is boring, no, staying here is difficult, but enlightenment is not boring.
I wouldn't know. I don't think I found it yet.
Yeah, you cannot find it, but you might have moments of enlightenment and you realize what true reality is. And then typically you are pulled back into your standard beingness, and you find it difficult to stay. Doesn't mean it's boring. Maybe then it's boring, but it's not that enlightenment is boring. At least not for me. Enlightenment is absolute fulfillment. So how can it be boring? But staying in a society like this and look around and everywhere, it's like, really? I mean, USA is electing next week. It's like, really? How is that possible? But it is possible. And you want to stay here? Really? Why would you want to stay? So staying is difficult. Enlightenment is, no, there's no attribute to it. Not that boring at all, no. But maybe it was a trick for education, I don't know. Sometimes it's good to say things because people run after it, and if you run after it, you're on the wrong track anyway.
Yes.
So it might be a helpful tool, but depends on the circumstances.
Okay, so let's go on to the third book, The Middle-Length Discourses of the Buddha.
Yeah.
And I'm not even going to try and pronounce
it's
called the
Machi. I said it's a Majjhima Nikaya. It's a selection of the discourses of middle length. And this is when Zen is already evolved from there. It is melded with Chinese culture, with Taoism, and very, very specific go to the basis, which is Zazen, sitting, letting go, open up, be done with it. But of course, it all goes back to Buddha. It's a Buddhist school. It's nothing new. And the Majjhima Nikaya, that's for scientists, for consciousness scientists, and I love it tremendously. For this guy, Shakyamuni, explained consciousness in detail, in every aspect, and how to deal with it, how to decondition yourself, how to go beyond. So it's all there. It's all there, beautifully written, and this particular edition that I had gets rid of all the repetitions. So if you read an ancient Buddhist sutra, you have tremendous number of repetitions. For this was all oral, they had to memorize it. So this edition cut all the repetitions out, so you had the essence, wonderful analogies, just beautiful. And everything in it's the core of all Buddhist teaching you find there. And for all schools also, other than Tibetan, they're special. So it's very good. And
when did you come across that book?
Must have been maybe a year after I started. I read the second one, the Zen stuff. I have known that you see, everything that was later than last week is difficult for me. So it was somewhere in the linear line.
Okay.
Maybe a year later, but.
So the next book, Up from Eden, A Transpersonal View of Human Evolution by Ken Wilber.
Yes, and Ken Wilber is also one of the great guys, I would say, for he arrived really at distilling. I don't know how much he read, how much he summarized in his head and to condense it. And I was very happy for having found his books before he spared me so much time. Because I'm really interested in everything and I read across everything, and then you realize, hey, there's really much to read. You don't and he had all the condensations already. And he was contemporary, which is always good to have this written in a modern language. And you felt it was not just mind stumbling, but he had a true practice behind it. He spoke also from experience. So I loved his books. In the early age, I felt in the early age, like many who start in the spiritual traditions, coming from the West, and they want to somehow combine, well, science and spirituality and bring it together and harmonize everything and so forth. These days, I would say, forget about that. But at that point, it was really interesting for me. Very, very good to read. And he went beyond. I think he was very good in finding the point where the mind does not bring you any further. And this is one of the most difficult things to understand, specifically for those who are a bit bright. They are so proud of being smart or whatever, and they want to figure everything out. But if you're really bright, you realize, well, your mind brings you so far, and then be done with it. And the rest, well, is experience and metaphors and trying to express it somehow, but it's not precise. It's not a science anymore. And realizing this is difficult, and I would say he did, and he expressed this beautifully in his books.
So number 5 is an Ascension Handbook, material channeled from Serapis by Tony Stubbs. And as you and I were just exchanging before we started, Tony Stubbs, a very interesting man. I met him in Las Vegas. He was part of the group that attended the Virtual Light broadcast with Steve Rother. And I'd heard that Tony had produced this book that apparently people had raved about. It was a massive success. I'd never come across it before. How did you come across this book?
Well, in my endeavors to read whatever comes into my hand, because I was just interested. And well, I'm lazy. I do not want to start at scratch if I know their work has been done. So I always try to see, well, what have others done so far, and then progress from there, go beyond, or then go different route for a reason. So I started reading all this esoteric stuff. And this is where we also spoke before, with the gems that you sometimes find in the pile of BS. And with the esoteric books, there's tremendous BS out there. Mostly copying from each other, rephrasing and blah 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 blah, and yeah, most of this goes back to the theosophists and okay, but so I came across that book, and again, it was, I wouldn't say it's scientific, but at least it was very clear, and it took the top-down approach. Like, well, here we are, we start from, I don't know how we called it, oneness or whatever, and then see how everything came into existence from there, descending into deeper densities. And he had good metaphors, good ways of explaining, a clear language, to the point, very inspiring. I usually don't agree with everything, but I don't have to. I just have to feel into what is this guy saying, how is he expressing it, where do I feel is the truth in it. And he was very good, and I would say he was the first book where I really opened up to channeled information. And I made the switch, well, to really not be interested in the messenger. Is it a human? Is it a channeled angel? Is it a collective? Is it a dragon? I don't care. Give me the message, and I will see if it belongs to me or if it fits with me. And he was the first guy in the written form where I said, okay, let's do that. I'm interested. I don't care. I cannot validate anyway, no matter who says it. Not validate, at least in a scientific way. I can validate by experience, but not in any other way. And so I opened up to that, and that was a good choice.
Well, I mean, there are so many channeled books, and some of them, as you said, just repeat each other. which one tends to think, well, if it's truth, then yes, you will come across it again and again, and others just contradict one another, which just confuses people. I'll have a look at that one.
On the other hand, if you take on the really broad perspective, then at some point you come to the realization, well, everything is a story anyway. And everything is a story anyway. The question is, in what story do you want to believe? So, well, if there's a majority of your surrounding believing in one version, then you tend to believe that version. Well, so be it. For instance, I had, I don't know how many versions of the life of Jesus Christ from channelers, and good channelers, which I honor in their work, but they're completely contradictory. So are they wrong or false, or did this all happen that way, depending on which timeline you were on? Yeah? But again, here for me the point is, what is the impact on you? What thing can you learn from it, if it was real or not? When it was real, it doesn't change anything, because I'm still here and cannot verify. So I even appreciate if there are 5 different stories, contradicting even, but each of them inspires me for some perspective. So what is real? In separation, nothing is real, and doesn't. But with the esoteric things, there's a difference. So sometimes you feel there is depth to it, and something of real authenticity, and then it's just cut and paste, rephrase some words, mangle it up somehow, and have a next book and explaining the same thing, like how do I open my third eye or whatnot. One book should be enough. There's no need for thousands of books of that.
So book number 6 is Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman.
Yeah, and this is a different genre, and this is which I admire the most in a way. For conveying truth is most easy by means of stories. Yeah. And I would say The Peaceful Warrior is a masterpiece in that respect. It's just wonderful, really, really wonderful, and that's a portal that you dive in and you want to be there. You want to be in this gas station with this guy and want to experience it yourself, or you'd even do while you read. And well, he expresses deep truths with a good story, even with some exercises which are valid always at certain points in your evolution. There's this one phrase, German phrase is Grundlust glücklich, happiness without reason, something like this. I love it. Wonderful, wonderful essence of something, one of those gems. And if you come to it, are just happy for no reason or fulfilled for no reason, this goes deep, because what does it mean in the end? You do not need any outer stimulus to have any feeling, which is the easiest way to liberate yourself. And well, he's one of those guys who puts it in a good story, along with Hermann Hesse, with the data, which is on everybody's list, I guess, and would have been on mine if it were the 10 best and not the order in which they appeared in my life.
Yeah, I love Dan Millman's work. I like books that make me stop and just go, well, that is so makes so much sense.
Yeah.
You know, and you can't argue with the wisdom and the truths.
No, you can't.
Because that's it.
And even worse is this other book, The Life Purpose. The life you were born to live, or so, where you just add your birth dates, birth numbers, and get some magic number. I remember I was really in love with the work of Millman. Yeah, I was standing at an airport, had time to pass, found that book. I said, "Oh no, how deep can you fall writing something like this? Coming from there, The Peaceful Warrior, and now you do this numerology thing." So I counted my numbers and said, "Okay, I'm this and that." I started reading and said, "Oh, that's creepy." Huh? I continued reading, and it was an absolute, I found, precise description of myself. And I said, "Wait a minute, what if I was born the day earlier or later?" So I recalculated, took the other explanation, and it didn't fit at all. And this is one of those things that you don't need to understand. You see it, you say, this is just stupid, but it works. And since then I have the habit to always calculate the life number. I cannot resist. I don't know the energies behind it. I have to look it up if I truly want, but I always sum them up. So that's also a Millman work.
I had exactly the same reaction. I was shocked to see this book standing out amongst all of his others. It seemed so different. And
Yeah.
not that I had a problem with numerology, because I'd studied it off and on for years, but it just, I couldn't see where it fit with this man. But once I started reading it, I understood. And
So
having had conversations with him, I understand.
tell me your life number.
Oh, God. I think it's a 5.
It's
I
a
think.
5.
I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I
And
can't
before?
remember because
And the
I
numbers?
don't retain.
Yeah,
I
okay.
don't retain the information.
No, and it happens that I calculated my number, and it's interesting. My wife, the closest friend of my wife, had this life number, also in my life, came up with the same number that I have. And then I wrote a small program calculating all life numbers of people in my generation. If there is maybe my life number a big peak. No, it wasn't. It's like, I don't know, 5% of all numbers have this specific number. Yet like 50% of the most important people in my life also had this number. I thought, okay, better put that book away. I don't want to be a living number and just acting out what some dice is said early on.
It does make you wonder, doesn't it? Whether
it's
all
weird.
ordained, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so number 7, another interesting one. Glimpses of a Golden Childhood, the rebellious childhood of a great
that's
enlightened
Osho.
one. Osho.
That's a special one.
Yeah.
What can I say? I would say 100 books of Osho, and everything was, each single book was worth reading it, and there's not a single bad one. So I only took this as a placeholder for all the rest, for it explains, it didn't write it, and as always, it's just the collection of what his disciples did, what he has told about his childhood. It's so interesting how he grew up, the tricks he played to his teachers and parents and in university and everywhere. And then when you consider when he was kicked out of the US, he was in his plane, he wasn't allowed to land, I don't know, in 60 countries. They all kicked him out for speaking about wisdom and enlightenment. Imagine that, like he was a terrorist. I think this is really achievement. So if I back then when I had this question in me, what do you want to be? I said, yeah, get this guy who's not allowed to land in 60 countries for speaking about wisdom. Yeah, so Osho was really impactful because he was funny, he was deep, he commented on everything. He was contradicting him over and over again, yet while you read it, it didn't matter. For depending on from what perspective you view, you have to contradict the other perspective. And there was a time in my life, a couple of years, where he was the only guy I felt who understood me, I could talk to. I was already in Zen and everywhere else, but it's hard to find a good companion on the way to talk to. And I felt, well, I didn't speak to him. I felt, well, he was resonating. Unfortunately, I never met him, unless there was one occasion that was truly surreal. It was in 2004 or 5, something like this. He was already dead, and I was driving in my car on a highway, and then suddenly, a German highway, pretty fast usually, on the right there was a parking spot where people can relax and get out of the car, and there was this Rolls Royce standing. And this short man with a long beard in a blue robe and grinning with his cheeks and waving at me. And I was looking at him, what's Osho doing there? I wanted to brake and turn around on the highway, but it just didn't work. And this was one of the few occasions I had where the surreal really was blended into physical reality. Most often it's somewhere out there, and you know that, but once in a while it's really here. And that was a meeting I will never forget. So he was waving me, and I was looking at him, and I couldn't go back. That was good. Yeah, I like that. So in a way, I met him.
So now we come to book number 9, and I think this is where we've lured everybody in with Talk of Dragons. Because this is Althar the Crystal Dragon by you, and it's on your list because it was a major turning point for you. So tell us the story. How did this come to you?
Yeah, this is a long story, but to make it short, I had experience like I just told with Osho. Oftentimes in other realms, in daily life, but like you open up to a different perspective, and then you sense something very close. And it started with dragons, maybe in 2013, where I had some odd encounters with dragons, well, with energies that I perceived as dragons. I'm always very, very precise in this wording. And as usual, when I have some encounter like this, I enjoy it, but then I let it go. Or I say I put it in quarantine, which is kind of popular right now. I put it in quarantine and see if it survives, meaning will it come back or not. And the dragons came back. And we were a series of really deep encounters. One very interesting, before Althar came in, I was jogging, which I really do not like at all. And then suddenly I saw this dragon flying next to me and very close, and I was, oops, here they are again. And this huge eye looking at me, looking into that eye, and then I went through that eye, and we were flying around and had really good experiences. Well, I was still trying to walk, and I hoped I could fly also, but it, it didn't work. And that was a kind of a, let's say, turning point maybe, or preparation. And then maybe 2 years later, the dragon I now call Althar came in, and it was equally weird. I was looking out a window with a huge vista, and I saw a whole swarm of dragons, like projected into physical reality. I thought, oh, that is weird, huh? And one of them came close very fast, and was all around me suddenly and all within me. And I was stunned. I was shocked. I was on maximum energy, high energy, and I thought, wow, what is this now? And this was precisely when I noticed, oh, this is the dragon energy. It is right here, and this is kind of an entity that is now with me. And this appearance was all around me. I could see it, see the shape of the dragon all around me for 2 weeks. And then it slowly faded, or I got used to it, I'm not sure. But that was, that was the event when Althar came in. And a few months later, I was on a small island. Actually, the picture you see behind me is from that island. A picture from the desk where I sat when I wrote the first Althar book and a couple of others. So I was more or less sitting there, and Althar came in, and we started the first book. No, actually, we had the first messages before I went there, but when I was there, then it really began with the first book, and continued since then. But I say Althar is a facet or an aspect of my true self, and I perceive him as, I say him, could be a she also, I call him a him, as a dragon. But I insist of not getting stuck in the dragon metaphor, for it's just a symbol. It's a symbol that maybe the humans relate to archetypically. Yeah. So I see him as a dragon, and when I started writing the book, I even considered cutting out all the dragon notions. I said, well, the dragon has no real impact here. It doesn't make a difference if a dragon is talking or somebody else is talking. And I feared it would distract too much from the message that came through. Only because it was so weird for me when he came to me, I said, well, if others have the same experience, then it might be helpful. So I decided, okay, I leave it in. And I take the risk of first being the weird guy with this dragon, henceforth, like a business world everywhere else, and also taking the risk of distracting the one or the other. But so that is why the dragon is still on the title and is still there. But Althar is very real with me, and he's still here.
And a crystal dragon.
Yeah.
He's a crystal dragon.
That's how he calls himself. Yeah.
That's how he calls himself. So, what kind of information came through while you were writing those books? What was the thing that surprised you the most?
Many surprising things. Some phrases. For instance, I'm a bridge in consciousness. He said, I'm Althar, I'm a bridge in consciousness. I thought, what is that? But I left it in. It became clearer much later. I left it in. Um, then in the first book, there were two main topics, or there are many main topics, but one stood out. It was let go of your emotional body. You don't need it anymore. And this was something that was surely not coming from me. I would have never written that. So it was really inspired by this energy. Let go of your emotional body, for the emotional body is the carrier of all your false identities. And every identity is false, specifically those that you as a human make up as all of your personas. Those false identities are the reason why you have all kinds of emotions, of needs and griefs and anxiety, and let go of this. And he talked about how to do that. But really letting go of the emotional barrier, I found strong tobacco, as we say in Germany. I don't know it's the phrase also elsewhere. That was strong for me. And then he made kind of a prediction, saying, well, the dragons are coming back, and not just a few, but many are coming back right now. So this book can be of help for those who are receptive for this kind of wording and for this kind of understanding. But all of the content in the Althar series is actually about enlightenment and how to get there. And that's the most important thing. It's very easy to describe enlightenment. It's your natural state, beyond any beliefs. End of discussion. Question is, how do you get there? How do you undo all the piles and piles and piles of belief? And that's where it gets tricky. And that's where all the pitfalls come in. That's where all the human mind games come in that block you over and over again, because then you want to be the spiritual hero. You want to have enlightenment as an object, like you have, I don't know, a black belt in karate. All the human comes always in between, and he's there to really cut through it once again to the bone, and leave nothing behind. Because only then, if you're truly free of beliefs, then you know that you are free. Everything else imprisons you. And you have to not only understand it, you have to realize it. And maybe one of the main important things he focuses on is the moments of enlightenment versus the illusion of attaining permanent enlightenment. You see, there's a fallacy that most people think, like, at some point when I do this or that, or I wait enough or pray enough, then there's this switch that is flipped and boom, I'm enlightened. And I move on as an enlightened being. Sorry, doesn't work that way. Maybe at some point there's something like permanent enlightenment, but until then it's in and out. And the bad news is, well, you are much more out than in. You have a moment of enlightenment, which is, I say, beyond time, and at that point in no time there are no questions, therefore no wrong answers, no nothing. It's all this fine. The moment you get back, well, you are in linear time, with all the linear things you have to do, with a linear body, and you remember as a memory your moment of enlightenment, and you say, it's boring. No, it's not, but you have forgotten about it, and you want to have it back as a replay, and this doesn't work also. So the question is, how do you arrive there at switching to this perspective on a regular basis? For every moment you are beyond all your beliefs. How to say, you clear up your pile, you make it real for yourself. Suddenly you know this is just more than just talk and wishful thinking. No, it's real. You have experienced it, and then the challenge is, what do you do with it? How can you live with it? How can you embrace it? How can you make it your normal state of being, which is permanent enlightenment, which is very, very difficult. And that's why then he switches to the term embodied ascension. For you might say there are two main dreams of those on the spiritual path. One main topic is, of course, becoming enlightened. But most people who really arrive there say, well, why would I be so stupid and going back? They leave quickly. That's one of the reasons why you see so few enlightened people around, at least in the permanent state of enlightenment. And then the second dream, that is, I would say, is more even crazy or ambitious or paradoxical, is the wish to stay, even though you realize this is all a dream. So this is a paradox, of course. So you want to wake up, but you want to stay in the dream. Huh? How does that work? Doesn't really work. You have to, I wouldn't say fool yourself, but you have to be very precise in what you do. Otherwise, you just switch to the other side and be done with this, for not coming back. Huh? And this is called embodied ascension, staying here even though you know it's a dream. And this is the second main focus of the book. Because if you want to go there, if you open up more and more, if you have more and more of this greater vision, it becomes increasingly weird to act as a human, linear human. And that's where there's the follow-up series, the Althar Surreal series, dealing with exactly this. It's surreal. It's
when one achieves enlightenment, one leaves because there's no reason to stay. Why do we come here in the first place? Why do we need to come here? I mean, surely when we're not here, we're in a state of enlightenment.
Yeah, it's a natural state. So
why would we want to leave that?
Maybe there was no we before it started. But this is one of those things where you can have 200 stories, and all of them, you cannot prove any of them, but some of them might resonate with them. And personally, I always go with a version that is open to expansion and that fits best with my experience without putting anything weird or belief stuff on me. So if you want my best explanation that I get from within and from my experience is, well, my main thing is pure consciousness, okay? And there is the potential that pure consciousness thinks of separation. Okay? And so it did. And then it realized, oh, no, it doesn't work. It's like your finger thinking of being separate from your body. And finger notices, no, stupid thought. Doesn't work. It's just pure consciousness. And whatever might be in there. Huh? But in the moment it occurred, until you realize, no, that's just nonsense, suddenly you have all the worlds of separation. And Althar explains it, I would say, beautifully. All potential experiences are there immediately. He calls it an ocean of oceans of scene spheres, where a single scene sphere is a given moment that you experience with all your perceptions and feelings and everything. And it's huge, it's vast. It's just there, and you dive in. And once you made that pondering of separation, I wouldn't say it was you, but it was something that pondered it. Boom, you had everything, and with your multiplicity, with the consciousness being in separation, then things unfold, and like they do, huh? And then you go deeper, and now you can have again nice stories. And I like good stories that fit with my experience and are also motivating. And if they are wrong, it doesn't matter, because in the end you let them go anyway. So my story goes like this: when you started out, then more or less in nothingness, but with the illusion of being in separation. But you don't know who you are. So Althar comes along and says, well, consciousness has two main characteristics. It can be aware of itself, and it can have intent. And that's it. With some addition, the intent is mirrored by so-called pure energy, which is also consciousness. So you have an intent which is mirrored to you. So you don't know who you are. For whatever reason, there's some intent within you that is mirrored to you. Okay? And then you think, oh, that's me. Oh, that's me. And then it goes on. And you stabilize the reflection, because then you know at least, oh, maybe I'm this. Looks better than nothingness. Okay? And this is, you might say, even on the highest level of consciousness. And then it goes deeper and deeper, because you can. And you can put intense above intense above intense above intense. And the human, in a way, is on the lower spectrum of consciousness. It's in the deepest density. You believe to be a human body. Imagine that. I mean, imagine that. Everybody believes he's a body. has to feed yourself, and the body is a perfect example for mirroring yourself all the time. You see your image right now. Therefore that's me. You see your own hand, you feed yourself. If you don't, your body falls apart. You might not, your body might die, but you not, but you never know because you keep feeding yourself. You're mirroring yourself all the time. And so it's a trap, it's a mirror cabinet. And once you're in, you continue playing. And also, let's say there's the remembrance of, call it pure consciousness, which is absolute fulfilling. And you want to replicate it in separation. Yeah, see, you want the feeling of love, of constant love. Nobody's interested in the temporary love. You want to be at constant. And this was the major insight of Buddha. He realized, and it's not that right anyway, nothing here is constant. So why hang on to it? Question mark. No reason. So you try to replicate, and you never give up. The first love failed, well, try a second one. And guess what? Fails also sooner or later. Or you switch your notion of love. So you are still in separation. You go to the very end. Now we are here in the deepest density, speaking about this, because more or less there is no hope. You cannot go deeper. Question is, how do you get out? And actually you don't get out by going backwards, but by coming out the other end of the tunnel. You don't add more layers and mirrors and more practices and dogmas around what you believe you are. No, you realize, you can let that go. In that instant, you are beyond. You have a moment of enlightenment. All these questions are irrelevant. Then you have to say, body calls you back. Wished I could have been there longer. Okay, and you walk. As soon as you walk, then at the latest, you are pulled back into your human body, and the game continues. So there is no reason that you are here, but there's a potential in pure consciousness to ponder separation, and because of that, it had to be pondered. I mean, think otherwise. There's God consciousness, but God is afraid of pondering separation. Doesn't make any sense. But what God is that? So he has to ponder and throw away because it's stupid. But as he did, sorry. Now we are here and discussing this, and we cannot prove it, but I like this story because it goes without guilt and without all what the religions say. I think it's a fair description, a valid description for me. Well, you got stuck on flypaper and it's difficult to pull yourself out. Other than you know the trick, and the trick alone doesn't even suffice because you are so deep, or you're in quicksand. You are so deep that it takes a while until you really realize, well, there is no quicksand in the first place. Yeah, and that's why we are here. There's no reason for it. It's just the case, and it doesn't matter. Question is how to get out. So therefore you can have millions of stories and choose one, but the only question is how to get out. How to get out is the only question, and the answer is obvious. Let go and be out. And then come up with a better story how you came here. But right now it's about going out, getting out again.
And this is what the entire series of books, the Althar series, was basically all about.
Absolutely. It tries to
showing
get
us the way out.
Yeah, it tries to get the human where he is, like caught up in his emotional body and a dream of enlightenment and problems that come with opening up and going back. But then the main approach is to, find good explanations how the dream works, the dream mechanics, so that you can let them go. Simple reason is that most humans in the Western world, they are kind of intrigued by cause and effect. They want to have an explanation. For then it's easier, if you understand it, it's easier to let it go. You see, if your mind understands, well, this makes sense to me, and going deeper doesn't make any sense, then I can let it go. Otherwise, you're just in the dark and you wonder, and your mind is churning about all explanations. But for me, if I find a reasonable explanation that describes what I experience, that shows the way out, I'm perfectly fine. And if somebody comes along with better explanations or better metaphors, perfect. I'm in.
So, how many books are there in the series? 5?
There are 5 in what I call the core series. There's the next series called Althar Surreal, which is 1 book. And then there are two books called Althar and Tents, which are transcripts of live workshops I did. So there are the books and the audios for the Althar and Tents series.
Okay, so why do we need so many books?
It's
Is
not
it
many.
because we're just not getting it?
No, because the books are so small.
They're small.
Yeah, not that size. They're comparatively small and they're very dense. And I wouldn't say it's many. And the good thing is that's it. The core series is core. You don't need anything more. You don't. You just don't. The rest is, well, getting it from a different perspective for better understanding. You see, and repeating things is often important, but it's not that there are I don't know 24 more details, hints, revelations that you can become finally the perfect being, all in oneness. No, it's all there. Do it or leave it or go on searching for something else. You're fine, but I would say no. It's complete in itself. Everything is in that. It should suffice. If it doesn't, well, okay then. It doesn't.
So you thought you'd come to the end of it after the fifth one. So why more?
Yes, it's specifically about the in-between phase where you are more and more in the enlightenment area and attempt to stay without getting crazy and without just puffing to the other side. And this is very special. It is really not for everyone. And the first paragraph is more or less, don't read this. It's not important. Go for the others. And then if you're still interested, yeah, have a look at this. That's the only reason. Huh?
It is very hard to stay here.
See?
As one learns more, as one wakes up to more, it becomes harder and harder to be here and see the craziness.
Yeah, but there's the other side to it also. And it's good that you others talk about this also. Huh? You see the craziness and ask yourself, well, how crazy is that? How can I stay here? But as you see, it's a dream anyway. You're getting less attached. Yeah, still it's annoying. If I have a neighbor and the child cries all day, it's not really fun. And okay, still annoying. But on the other side, things get easier also. So this bad dream becomes a happy dream in a way. It's easier to enjoy. You see, you don't have fear of anything, at least not that you need to have. You might still have, but you don't need to have, and you know that, so things become easier. So it's getting much easier. You can enjoy it more easily. At the same time, if you're sensitive, and you see other people, and you see their suffering, their depression, then this is what hurts most. Others bothering you is okay, like now in COVID times, it's not really fun to be out there going shopping or so. Well, I can stay at home, I have no real problem. But seeing how others suffer and they are continuing banging their head against the wall, hoping to end their suffering by doing this is difficult. And at the same time, you know that you've been the same for long years or long lifetimes, and that's the reason why people choose to stay. For it's of tremendous help if there's some that can talk about this. Even having a body, not just through a book. A book is good enough, but somebody who is alive and talks this language can be helpful. And I had many living teachers, and don't need to be enlightened. That's not the point. But there are those who are dedicated to go this way, and if without those and without some books, I would have been lost. So my choice is definitely to embody the highest consciousness possible, and this is actually what a Buddhist monk vows: become a living Buddha. That's what you want to do, and no matter how you phrase it. And I'm still in. This is my reason why I stay.
I'm sure that there are many people who have lots of questions about dragons. Before we started recording, you talked about the bullshit, the BS that is around dragons, the mythology. I mean, dragons now, every fantasy book has a dragon in it. If it's any good, we have so many misconceptions and beliefs around dragons. How did you feel when it was obvious to you that this energy that was with you was a dragon?
It was just a knowingness. I did not search for the right term to denote this perception. It was just a knowingness. And I have never been in dragon stuff before. Never ever. Never interested me. I had nothing against dragon and I had nothing against unicorns. Well, I would favor dragons maybe, but I was never in the dragon I don't know world. This is always what makes me curious. When you are thinking about something and then something like this surreal happens, but it's along the lines that you are thinking anyway, then I'm very cautious. But if there's something where you do not think about at all in the moment or in the last years, then that's much more validity to me. And with Althar, it was a knowingness. Even before the dragons, there was no question. It appeared to me in my inner side as a dragon. And I'm the first one to contend that there is no one-to-one correspondence from, say, a felt presence to a symbol. It can be arbitrary, but I assume a dragon is kind of embedded in the human consciousness for whatever reason. And I do not care too much even, and I could change it. Right now, I do not feel Althar in dragon shape at all. It's just the energy of him and the qualities of him, which is utmost clarity, which is compassion, which is presence, which is not compromising, not at all compromising, and a bit of humor. And that's good. And I don't need any wings or 2 or 4 legs or a big tail. No, it's not important.
I did a boo-boo. I skipped number 8. I went straight to number 9. I was so keen to get to the dragons, but we have to go back to number 8, which is active consciousness. To be or not to be enlightened. Adama St. Germain, Geoffrey Hoppy, and Jeff and Linda. Well, Jeff was on here just a few weeks ago talking about his 10 best. And I also recently interviewed him about active consciousness. So tell us when you came across Jeff's work and what it was about active consciousness that appealed to you so much, because I actually think it's one of my favorite of his books.
I came across St. Germain actually on the 1st January 2005. And I know that because it was the 1st January. It's easy to remember. And I was sitting by myself and thinking about the next year and my life in general and whatnot, what you want to do and all the rest of that. Good day, 1st January. Then I went to my PC and wanted to Google something, search for whatever. I landed on the most ugly page I've ever seen with bumping hearts and stars and I awful, really awful. But at the end there was a small sentence saying, I feel connected to Shambhala. What is that? So I clicked on that thing and ended up on the Crimson Circle webpage. And 2005, they had already all the channel links, the monthly channel links online. I had always, I think, and I started reading the first channel of Tobias. And on the first page there were one trigger word that was extremely important to me, which was fluid light or liquid light. It was a trigger word for me. So I kept reading, and immediately I felt home. This was again a way of talking about the story of everything, or a way of talking about everything, how we got there. You must not comply with the version he gave, but it was touching, it was deeply resonant. And the first 3 series, well, they span the whole teaching that they give from the beginning and how to get out, and I just loved them. And at some point I said, well, I have to check that out. It was still when I have accepted channeling, but I wasn't really sure if this is, what is this, made up, or how real is that? So I wanted to check them out, and it happened that Jeff and Linda were in Germany in that year, end of the year, so I went there and met them and had a long exchange with Jeff at that time, and we had a deep connection immediately. And starting from there, we made a lot of things together. Let's put it that way. A lot of influences back and forth. And yes, and I was Saint Germain here to mention. Well, he's highly interesting. He's in the way Jeff channels him. In the early years, there were a couple of classic workshops, and that would really get me in beyond the initial teachings of Tobias was the Dreamwalker Death workshop, where Saint Germain or Adamus explained in detail what happens when you die, and how can you guide a dying person after you died. See, mine before, okay, but after the spirit that left the human flesh, what can you do? How can you be of help for that? How can you prepare that? And that really got me in. For you felt well. There was somebody who knew he was speaking about, and for me it was also clear. Well, it was surely not Jeff who made up a nice story, because when you know him personally, you know what is Jeff talk and what is this talk. Hi Jeff, nothing against you, but you just know, and he knows that we know. And it was fascinating. It was fascinating, and so I went along with them. I just liked the work they did, and well, they talk about enlightenment in these modern days. There are various parts that I'm strictly not in line with Adamus, but this is more the way to get there. And this is up to evaluation in 100 years from now, what is the best way, and nobody knows before. But as far as the story goes, it's pretty much aligned, and I like it very much. So Act of Consciousness, the book is a collection of channels. I think it was not written to write a book. No, it's a collection of channelings put together in order, and pointing out that what you're doing here is actually an act. And depending how free you are in yourself, you can choose the beliefs or the characters that you want to act out and go with it. Sounds nice, everybody nods his head, but then fails miserably in doing so. The question remains, how to get rid of all these crappy beliefs.
Yeah, and it's one of those books, again, that has just so much truth, so practical, so down to earth, inarguable.
Yeah, and without cliches, without dogma, with humor, hands-on, making it accessible. Still, my perception is, hey, it doesn't mean just to read it and think about it. Like with the Tao book, there's something you can do and you should do that is in the human realm. And if you don't do that, I don't see how it works out. But as said, we see in a few hundred years when we do the calculations, those took that route, those took that route, they had 200 extra lives, and they made it. But it's not a rush or not a race anyway.
So we come to book number 10, which is The Disappearance of the Universe by Gary Renard.
There's an interesting story behind that. Really, this book had to force itself on me. And it's so weird. When you go to Amazon, you have a book, or any book, then you always have this, what customers who bought this book also bought that book. I love that section, because then you come across books that you would have never found before. And this book appeared oftentimes, and at least for 2 years, I would say, I saw it. I looked at it, had the first 3 sentences. I said, no, not yet. Then at one point I met a guy here where I live, a good friend of mine, meanwhile. And I talked to him about Althar, and he's a movie maker. And he said, I want to make a movie about your Althar books and blah, blah, blah. And we started talking. I thought, well, let's see, why not? Not sure if it works. And I checked out what he has done, my friend. And I came about a movie he made with Gary Renard, who wrote that book. But I only was looking at the movie technique and the question technique. I did not listen to that guy. And then again, I don't know, half a year later, for some reason, I started reading it. I was drawn into it. And I continued reading it. And after, 50 pages or so, I realized, hey, this is more or less an introduction to A Course in Miracles. And it wasn't marketed like that. It wasn't written somewhere, or I overread it. But I think it wasn't mentioned anywhere in the description and in the first pages. And I was pissed, because I had the Course in Miracles in my hand years and years ago. I read it, or I felt into it, and my reaction was, hey, this is really good. But the language, I cannot stand the language. The Father, Son, sin, guilt, atonement thing. And maybe later. So I put it back, and there was that voice. Yeah, maybe later. and so I was close to put that book away, because I felt cheated. But I continued reading, and I liked it so much, I have to say. And the all the descriptions, all the wordings he took from the Course in Miracles, and then of course I got the Course in Miracles and started reading it here and there. And the one outstanding thing was the feeling I got when I had it in my hands. It was an ebook, but still it felt the same. I had the same shivers as with Althar, precisely the same. I thought, hey, what's going on here? It's more or less the same or what? And then there was somewhere in the beginning also the phrase "a bridge in consciousness." I thought, let's see. And as I read through the book, I said, well, this is really good, so much good stuff. But hey, you can condense it, put it succinctly. It's a bit too much, and again that voice from behind, see, that's what you have done in a way. It's a different phrasing, different language. You not need to be a Christian, but what the Course does, of course, is redefine all those words. Like sin is believing in separation or so. Atonement is realizing the moment that it's just a dream. So you have to convert all the time while you read. If you just skim through it, you don't notice this, and it's a bit weird what this book is all about. But it's written to get, I would say, the stuck Christians, so they can have the language that they are used to, reinterpret it, and go beyond. And but apart from that, if you have the habit of translating all these words, I think it's really beautiful. The whole course it's wonderful, just wonderful. And he brought me to it, and his books are also wonderful because he has a true life story, how he lives it, how he experiences it, how he explains it in the dialogue form with some entities that might be real or not. Again, I don't care if they are real. Story is good, I go with it. And I would say this was the last book that was kind of confirmation. That's always nice, and to find some confirmation from a source that you really trust. You feel trust when you read that. At least I do. There's truth to it, and I like that very much.
Out of these 10 books, if you were asked to give one to somebody starting out on a spiritual path, which one would you recommend?
Starting out, fresh guy. Out of those 10 books, no, there's no answer to that. It depends on the guy. You have to see the guy. Is it more a feeling guy? Is it more science, a mental guy? Is he into drama? Is he into, I don't know, does he come from somewhere? So there is no real answer to that. Truly not. I have no answer. I can't.
That's a good answer.
It's a good answer. Thank you.
It's a very good
that's
answer.
the point. There is no that one book. If there was that one book with a problem, then it was the Bible or the Quran, and burn everything else. Everything is written here. Yeah, maybe for one person, but the others need a different book, different phrasing. So if I would say the one advice for everybody on starting out, sit straight, shut up, do nothing for really 1 hour. See if you survive that, and you will. And then consider what you want to do. Don't go for mental, and this is the direct way, the letting go, and you can experience it. It works immediately. It has a tremendous impact. That's why I say I'm not sure if there's any single good book about Zen. Yeah, there are millions of books, and everybody's saying the same, and you might get the feeling, but then you have to do it. Like the practice, ideally with some more people, so you have better stability in your awareness. Once you do that, once you feel the magic of letting go, you have a completely different understanding. And that would be my advice. Don't read, do that, and then continue doing that and don't read. If you can do that, don't even read the Althar books.
You did say that you wished that you'd had the Althar books 30 years ago.
Yes, definitely. Because I am who I am, and I wanted to have an understanding, a model, not a detailed thing, but a nice understanding of how things work. And I had so many books where I felt, they're going in the right direction, like Jane Roberts with the test material. always when it touches where it becomes interesting, oh, they change topic. I was going there, it was interesting, why do you have another question, stupid guy? Yeah? And then they're meandering around and you can find the puzzle pieces. But never did I find something that is succinct, which is, well, go to the end. Maybe there's these books exist, but I didn't find them if they do exist. So I say to myself, when I finished this, I said, wow, I wish I had this before that, because it's about letting go anyway. But it's so much easier if you know why you let go. Small example, if you start, say, with Zen practice, and you sit on your cushion, and you get more sensitive, weird things happen to you. Weird things happen to you. Suddenly you have to bleed through from another lifetime. Now what do you do with that? If you are naive, you try to find out, oh, I had another lifetime, how exciting, who was that, why was that? I'm sure it was a pharaoh or a king or a queen or a pope. Or how do you deal with that? And it's not the number one thing that you are taught when you go in such a school. They say, well, this is Makyo. Whatever happens to you during meditation, be it voices or images, that's called Makyo. Let it go, and that's the real answer. But I find it's much easier to have an understanding of why that happens and why you can let it go, even if it bothers you all the time, because otherwise you might think it's still your mother that is the fault for everything in your life. When in fact it was, I don't know, a lifetime 200 years ago that was drowned. And therefore you're afraid of water. It was not your mother, it was this guy. So, you see, suddenly you can let that go. But you have to have the understanding of it, because only letting go sometimes is difficult. And as they say in Zen, or as I say, you can sit on your shadow and some things just don't surface. So you can be aware, but something might just be hidden, and then it's good to push it a little bit. That's what the master is for, if he's competent. Push it a little bit to bring this up. And that's what the dragon does. He shows you where you are, the things that you cannot put your fingers on, but that they're still influencing your life in much more degree than you wanted to have.
I do want to ask you something we ask everybody, which is about your keywords. Your keywords were author, consciousness explorer, wisdom distiller, and taster. I love that. And I always like to ask for one more really personal one, so that we get some insight into you, the person. Tell us something, one word or a short phrase about yourself that perhaps only your wife and your friends know, the human self.
Gyate. That's a small phrase. It means going beyond the beyond. That is the one keyword that interests me. Going beyond, continue going beyond, and it's a phrase actually from the Heart Sutra. It ends going beyond, going in that context, going beyond the teachings of Buddha, and even when you are beyond, go beyond the idea of beyond. Just go beyond and stop all that talk, even the Buddha talk, and that's the beauty of it. Of Buddha, it doesn't stick to his own teaching, and I love that. Go beyond when you're done. Yeah. Other than you want to teach it, it might be helpful. But for yourself, be done with it. Gyate.
Well, Joachim, that was a fascinating conversation and a fascinating list. Thank you so much for that. I know so little about Buddhism and Zen, so it's quite an education for me. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me here today, and thank you, listeners. Always good to have somebody to listen. Not that often that people are interested in this stuff.
For sure. Well, thank you for being with us. And we will have this video edited and posted by next week. So, then anybody who obviously hasn't been able to join us today can catch up with it then. And please tell people where they can go to find out more about you and the Althar books.
Well, you go to my website, which is wolffram.de, WOLFFRAM.de. It's my last name. Should find it at least on Sandra's page. There you find the list of all the books, and they exist in many translations. 8, 9, I don't know, many translations. And there are occasional workshops in these days online. So if you're interested, just go there and have a good meeting with Althar at some point in time.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to all of you at home for joining us today. And if you're not already on the special face-to-face with email list, you can join that and get last minute updates if we have, for any reason, as happened recently, to change the URL and the access code, which does happen from time to time. You'll know about it. Thanks for being with us. You can find that face-to-face sign-up form on the video page on the No BS Spiritual Book website. Okay, I'll be back again next week with another edition of Face to Face. So have a great week, and I'll see you then.